Hey, welcome to episode number 20 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Today's show is all about how to start putting away your excuses and start taking responsibility for your personal finances to help you lead a happier and stress-free financial life. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's show. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad, and we would love to connect with you on one of those social platforms. Again, welcome to today's show. So let me ask you a question. Are you pointing the finger at others when it comes to your finances, hoping someone else will fix your problem? Are you pointing the finger at your income because that's the problem? Have you ever thought about consolidating your debts because there's just too many bills, or too many bills are the problem? Well, today we've got some good news and we've got some bad news. The bad news is that the problem is you. But the great news is that the solution is also you. Stepping up and taking responsibility for your personal finances is one of the most important things that you will ever do. And from our standpoint here on this show, it is the single biggest change that you can make to live the life that you want instead of the life that you're stuck with right now. Ooh, that's rough. Ryan wrote that, and if you're mad at that, that's Ryan. You can send him the email for it.
It's funny that even when you read it, if I put myself back, 8, 9 years ago before we started this, right now, I'm telling you, I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
It's just so like, this is just one thing for us we just really struggled with, not maybe as we get into this, it was just it really wasn't until we looked at each other and kind of just said, this is us, we have to change, we've got to do something. No matter all these other reasons and excuses, we used them for years and years and years, and it just dug us a bigger and bigger hole. And so it wasn't until that point. And so for me, this is a huge step that people need to take to get to that, to really start seeing momentum build. Once we did, that's really when things started to happen.
Yeah, I would, I think, Amber, you've said this multiple times before, and not necessarily on this podcast, but you've said you've got to be ready to take this journey, right? I think, and you've said that to some of our brand new Roots members. Like,
I think you got to be ready for anything in life. That's like always been my, you got to be ready to stop eating all the junk food. You got to be ready to start making better financial decisions. And I know that it took us a very long time of bad financial choices to be ready.
Yeah,
it definitely did. And it was like consolidation and bankruptcy. And if we could just ease the pain and lower these payments, we'll be so much better and we can do better later. And it better never really came until we started working on ourselves and admitting that we were doing not so great things.
Yep. I am with the both of you. I hit rock bottom when I lost our house, and I was supposedly doing this before that happened. Yeah, I wasn't doing anything. I was doing nothing. And I lost my house because of a divorce and went in foreclosure. It was terrible. And it was the moment though that changed everything for me. And I believe in that statement that Amber makes though, is that you've got to be ready. And, I've done coaching calls with individuals, and they openly, and I can noticeably tell by their tone that they are not happy with what I'm telling them. And it's like Ryan said, he was pissed off when he heard that intro, because it takes you back to that life where you were in denial, where you were pointing the finger at everything else and blaming everything else that was the reason why you were struggling. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, unfortunately. And some people I've spoken with, and they've never called me back. And that's unfortunately one of the tough parts about my job. But we can't sugarcoat things. Like Ryan said, you got to come to the realization that it's you and you are the problem. But Ryan, you put a question on here. I think this is a good one, because you have on here, for the three of us to share briefly on how our lives have changed our lives and also of the people of around us. How has living a different way and living this debt-free life changed your life, but also changed the people around you?
Our lives are just completely different than what they were in some respects. I mean, had we not taken this journey, I'm a firm believer that I think our kids would have suffered for it in the same way. They would have been normal like everyone else. They would have done all of the things that I would have done. I bought a car. I remember buying a brand new car at 18 years old and having a payment. And I think I would have probably convinced my oldest that that's what you're supposed to do. That's how we're going to build your credit. That's how we're going to do all these things, do all the marketing tactics I would have passed on to them. But if you look at just that example of my oldest son, he's going to finish up his 2 years of school, and he's on track to graduate 100% with a bachelor's degree, debt-free. And in a day and age today where it can't be done, college is too expensive, there's no way you can pay it off, he's done it. Now, I'm not saying everyone can, and everyone comes from different backgrounds, but for me, he's living proof that what we've done has taught him. And when he recently just got laid off due to all of the lockdown stuff and the coronavirus. But he was selling cars before this, and he's coming home and he's just like, I'm going to run my car till it goes into the ground. I don't want to buy a new car. I see these people taking out all these payments. And that has been a direct reflection of what I feel is us. And in other ways, we're helping people we know through this stuff. People have reached out to us and say, hey, you've done this. I've got people that I know listen to this podcast that I don't know that I can really fully understand the impact that I've had, because it's twofold. I impact someone else, they impact other people. But for me, I know just directly in our family, we've impacted lives, and they are going to impact other lives.
I can't even follow that. But you're right. Cause our daughter doesn't have any college debt. We've drilled it in her head. Don't get a credit card. And she's saving money and that kind of thing. So it's helped change her life and not just ours, but for us, a lot of it is just choices and giving us the freedom to do more of what we want to do and not be tied down by payments. Especially, we're still in this crisis and we don't have the stress there. So for us, I think that's where our lives have changed for sure.
I could sit here for a long time talking about the oodles of testimonials that we have of people just saying those things. This has changed my life. This has saved my marriage. This has helped me become a better parent. This has helped me get the job that I want. This is, we can go on and on with those stories, and we've brought a few of those people on this podcast, and that's the fun part about my job. A lot of people say, Brad, you must really like money to teach people and talk to people about it, and it's like, well, I like money, but what I really like more is helping people get to the point where their money and their situation is starting to change their lives, and it's allowing them to live the life that they want to live. That's what I really like to do. And those are the fun parts. Those are the fun stories. If you follow us on social media, you follow any of our pages, especially on Facebook or even on Instagram, 95% of the stuff that we're sharing are people's celebrations. And there's a reason for that. And that's because we want people to know that normal, everyday people making normal salaries, working in normal households, working normal jobs are winning with money. And you can too. And it's like we all said, though, as we started this podcast, we got to get past some of those excuses. So let's kick it off. First, let's start talking about how you can start taking some responsibility for what's going on with your finances. And number one is you've got to stop blaming, period. Blaming other people, blaming your job, blaming your income, blaming how you grew up. It could be, there's so many, blaming your ex-spouse. We could go on and on with the blame game, but it's really only going to keep you stuck that much longer and keep you in the life that you're living right now. I know for me, the biggest one where I always used to blame was I didn't make enough money. So every time I would get that raise or that bonus, magically a few months later, that money was gobbled up by another payment and more debt. And I would keep blaming it. Just keep blaming it. It was never enough money. And I started resenting my job because I didn't think I was getting paid enough. And really, at the end of the day, it was me. It was my fault.
Yeah, I remember saying the same thing. If I could just get a better job, if I could just get a little raise, we'll have so much more. We could do so much more. But then what would happen is we would go spend the raise on more stuff. So, and then start blaming it again on more money, needing more money.
Yeah. And like the big thing for me with blame is it's blame and fault and all that. It's great. It makes you maybe feel better for the moment, like take some guilt off you, but it's always, you're just looking back, you know, you're not blaming yourself in the future for your stuff. You're blaming your situation on what's happened in the past. And if you're going to stay stuck in the past, that's exactly what you're going to continue to produce. Is everything you've done to this point is what that's what you're going to get, because you're stuck in this backwards looking, instead of going, what can I do to change this? How can I get better?
The other one we want to share too is you've got to stop making excuses. And we're going to rattle off maybe 5 or 6 of them right here, but these are overwhelmingly, I mean, most of these we hear on a regular basis, even from some, unfortunately, from some of my Roots members who are participating in what we do and what we teach. And I'll share the biggest one out of this list here in just a minute. But number one is, I deserve it, right? Whatever purchases that you want, and you're willing to go to any extent to make those purchases happen, no matter how much debt you got to take on. That I deserve it attitude, or treat yourself, is the other one that's out there, right? My partner is not on board is another one from not getting started. And this is a tough one. We actually did a whole podcast about this, so make sure you go through and check that out. But that's a tough one. Third one, probably the biggest excuse that I hear on why people don't work on their finances, is I don't have time, which I fell for it too. And it just, man, it's mind-boggling now, though, looking back, and we're going to, hopefully maybe we can unpack that one a little bit. But another one is it's overwhelming. Fear, right? But at the end of the day, we understand it. We've all been there. We've had to face it ourselves. But at the end of the day, that's still an excuse that's keeping you stuck. And then lastly, I don't make enough money. By far, one of the biggest ones we get when we send out our testimonials. I can't believe how many freaking people just doubt that they can win with money. It is unbelievable sometimes the comments and the posts that we share on these success stories about how, oh, that's just not possible, or I could never do that, or they must have something special that I don't have. And it's like, yeah, a will to win and not make excuses is what they have.
We did the same thing. We don't have enough money. Like, we could pay I never would have thought we were going to pay $46,000 off in 20 months. Never. We didn't have that kind of money. Never. Until we started actually focusing on it and doing the action steps and changing our behaviors to make it happen.
The one that I struggled with, and I still struggle with it. It's not like I got out of debt magically. I'm this great person and I don't have any of these same feelings. I deserve it. I work hard. All these other people are getting new cars. I work hard. I put in my 40, 50, 60-hour weeks. I should get a new car too, because, man, why should they get it and I don't? I still struggle with that. I mean, I want a boat. I'll tell you, I want a boat. You can get my wife down here. She will tell you that I want a boat, you know, and there are days where it's like, I deserve a boat and I'm going to go buy a boat. But we don't, because we've grown from that. But yeah, I still struggle with, I deserve it, because that's a strong driver. I mean, everybody works hard. We all work hard and we all want to feel like we have something, but then you end up with it. And I've been there. You buy it. I'm super happy. I love this new car. And 2 months into it, I hate the payment and I'm mad.
I feel the same way, you know, when we look at, you know, because we love camping. We've got a really nice travel trailer. It's, you know, 6 years old, got a really good deal on it, paid cash. But at the same time, there's some really cool travel trailers out there that are way better than what we have. So yeah, when we're out camping and we see those travel trailers pull in and the nice trucks that are pulling, yeah, I mean, we're human. I think it's just human nature to be envious and tell yourselves and sell yourselves that you deserve it. But that's one of the behavior changes that's got to happen over time. And it takes practice. It's not something that you fix in a day. It takes practice of telling yourself no, telling yourself that you've got to pay cash for things. And it sucks sometimes. When it comes to I don't have time, this is a big one. And well, the only thing I would recommend is that if you're using this excuse on a regular basis, this I don't have time, I would just say, really look at how much time you spend working for your money. For a lot of us, it's 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And you think about how much time we spend making that money, but how much time do we actually spend outside of work planning on what to do with that money so we're making the most of our time. And when you think about it, if you're just throwing your money away, you're also throwing away what? Your time as well in a lot of ways, because that's what you're trading money for. You're trading time for money. Next one we want to talk about is stop complaining about your situation.
I mean, Henry Ford has a great quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so for me, that's huge to me, because I'm a big believer that you are what the thoughts you put in your head, the things that the people you maybe hang around, all that stuff. It's who you are as a person. And so if you tell yourself all the time about, there's no way I can get out of debt, I don't make enough money, you're not going to probably get out of debt, because you're making yourself believe that. And so I think it's kind of that negative self-talk I think a lot of people get into. And I know I used to have it. It goes back to the first two we had, the excuses, the blame. You constantly in your head, like regretting choices you made. Oh, I shouldn't have bought that car. I shouldn't have done this. And you're just stuck in the past. And so for me, you've got to stop doing that. You got to just say, okay, what's done is done. And we're going to start making some changes. Try to catch yourself doing that during the day. You'll probably be surprised how often we do that, whether that's your finances or personal, about how much you just blame yourself. I catch myself still doing it all this time. I do something and I'm like, oh, you dummy. That's just that negative self-talk that you do to yourself.
So let's take a little bit of time and start talking about what are some ways that we can change some of this excuses and, some of these negative self-talk or some of these statements that we're making. How can we start transforming this over time? So we're going to kind of unpack a few of the things that have worked for us and share those with you, and hopefully you can start using some of these. And again, keep in mind that this is the whole tortoise and the hare type story, right? This takes time. The first thing that you can do is start to take time to discover what you want in life. And guys, we just got done with our spring workshop here in like late April, right now as we're recording this. And one of the big points that we talk about in that workshop is that it is unbelievable to me, and well, not really, because I used to live this, but when most people who live paycheck to paycheck, which is about 78% of the population, overall majority of them do not have any short-term or long-term financial goals when it comes to their money. And that's got to change. Like, your money is going to help you build the life that you want. And if you're only living for today and living for tomorrow, you're likely very broke because your emotions are constantly going to be taking over. So let's talk about these. We talk about this one a bit, a lot here is what is your why? What's the reason why you want to get out of debt? And we've shared this before, but one of the big reasons why I want to get out of debt, and maybe you guys can share a little bit of your reasons, but number one was I wanted to be a better example to my kids. And number two is I wanted to be able to open my own business and not have to work for somebody and be able to kind of control my own destiny and have the freedom and flexibility to be able to do what I want and when I want to do it. And being under a lot of debt, there was no chance that was going to happen. So that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to get out of debt.
Your why has to be you got to get down to the nitty gritty and specifics of your why. So early on, it was like, we want to retire. And that's a great goal. But here's a fact for everyone. You are going to retire, whether by choice or by force, no matter what happens. You're going to retire with no money, or you're going to retire with $3 million. You have to decide. I want to retire. Great. When do you want to retire? You want to retire at 65, at 67, at 55? What do you want your yearly income to be? There's so many questions in that statement of I want to retire that have to be answered, which will help you get to your why. Because sometimes what happens, if you're saying the big motivator is you want to retire, and then you get to be 55 years old and you're like, I'm not retired. Well, was that your goal? Because if it was, you should have said that, because that kind of then sets in motion what all needs to happen. And I think this is what an area where a lot of people fall short in their why is they have these very generalities of I want to take more vacations. Well, where do you want to take those vacations? I mean, I got a yard. You can camp in my backyard for $50 a night, but I don't think that's what you want to do. So you got to really define that. Do you want to travel Europe? I mean, there's so many questions behind some of these. So for me, if you're thinking about your why and you're just using these general statements, that's a problem, and it's going to derail you when you get started. So you got to get specific in that. So for us, big things were like with my son graduating college debt free. That was a huge why for us. And that's come true, because that's been the big push for us.
Yeah, for us, I don't think we had anything specific when we started and then we just did like baby steps, like, part of the program. But once we're in it and we were doing it, we're like, hey, why are we doing this? But we really had to focus on having our own home. And that is what kind of kept us going. And now we've got this laid out plan and it's getting so close that we could taste it and see it. And we're looking, and now, we're going to have to now, I think, sit down and refocus on whys past that to help us keep going, because just because we're debt free doesn't mean we're not tempted by a lot of different things.
Also, when you're considering your why, also, think about what are you doing right now? Let's talk about your career. Let's talk about what you do to make money. I'll share a story, with, Ryan and me. Our mom worked her entire life. And unfortunately, she battled cancer several times during her lifetime, and cancer unfortunately took her life in her mid to late 50s. But they did very well at saving. They did very well at saving for retirement. They were able to, luckily, based on the time that they were able to do it, they were able to retire at somewhat of an early age. Like, I think my mom retired in her early 50s. My dad not too long after that. So, but here's the thing. They worked their entire lives and saved and saved and saved, but then they retired, and then my mom only lived for about 5 years after that. And about a month before she had passed away, I remember asking her, do you have any regrets looking at what you're looking at right now? And she said, the one regret I had is I worked at a job that I didn't really like, and I wish I would have became a teacher. So, think about those types of things. What, it's not just about getting to retirement and then living. Live right now. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by cleaning up your finances, not being tied down to debt so much so you're tied to a certain salary. It gives you the freedom and flexibility to make different choices, try new things, go after things you're interested in, whether they pay you a ton of money or not. But the happiness that it's going to bring in your life is going to be way more beneficial than, say, the dollar amount that's going to put in your bank account.
That's huge. If you go ask older people about their life, they're going to tell you a lot of regrets. And I don't want to be one of those people. I don't. And I think that's one of my main goals is don't look back on your life and wish you woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda. And I've said this on my podcast before, and we're kind of talking about excuses. I made a lot of excuses. I pointed my fingers at the debt-free dad that it's not going to work. And it does. And I think our lives are completely different now. And I think if you put that away, you're just going to find, and you really do this, it's amazing what will happen.
As you're working on these excuses, the best way to kind of overcome them is to start taking some action. Really start taking some actionable steps. And it don't have to be big steps, but just small steps on a daily basis. So a couple of things is obviously getting connected with people who want to get out of debt, people who want to change their finances, people who want to improve their lives. I mean, this for me was probably one of the biggest things that I did when I started this journey. And it wasn't even really more from a financial standpoint. It was just like, wow, I really want to improve my life. And I really need to think about the type of information that I'm reading and putting into my head and the people that I'm around. And it made a huge difference, not only in my finances, but really just where I am today. And it'll make a huge difference for you as well. I mean, you are the average of the people that you surround yourself. There's no question.
Yeah, I think another point is, look at how you've been spending your money. I mean, this was like one of the very first things we did. And I remember when we printed out all our bank statements, we got everything together, and then I just went through and started highlighting. And like, to me, that's something you can do just to get a gut check of where is all my money really going? And I think that's it's an easy step. You can just go to your bank. If you have a bank, you just go online, you can print out the statements. There's nothing, again, it goes back to the time, make some time for it. It might take you a while. I know it took us a while that first time because there was a lot to highlight.
Going in through and looking at those expenses, since you're already there, one of the best things that you can do is get started on a budget. And we talk about, I think the word budget comes up just about every show. I mean, it is just
it's that important though.
It is, but it is a beast. We get it, right? But it is just such like Amber said, it's just such an important piece. It's like the corner piece to the puzzle. Also, try to talk to your spouse. And Ryan's got notes in here, don't take no for an answer. And I love that because, and it's hard. I try to, coach my members and say, if they've got a reluctant spouse or partner that's kind of dragging their feet on some of this stuff, it's like, look, you can't give up, but you also can't be a nag about it either. And there's a fine line, right?
I think it's important too, when you're talking to your spouse, is to leave the blame at the door. Cause I know that was one of our biggest things is, I would blame him, he would blame me, and it would just go back and forth. And I think that's really important, just to leave that at the door and just, like Brad said, talk about how all of this money stuff is making you feel, and don't blame each other for it.
You got to forgive yourself. This is a big one, and this has probably been a big one for me. It's regret has been a hard thing at least when it comes to finances, has been a hard thing that I've battled over the years. And just looking at how savings works, looking how compound interest works, just wishing I could go back to those 20s and make different choices. It's easy to go to that dark hole of regret. So I'm constantly focusing on the future, constantly focusing on the things that I'm doing right now. But you do have to forgive yourself. There are a lot of people out there that we coach and work with that are just beating themselves up for the situation that they're in, and that's only going to keep you stuck. You got to focus on the windshield and not the rearview mirror.
Yeah, this is big for me as well. I mean, stuff happens in life, and I probably even would add to this is forgive yourself, but also maybe forgive others, or whatever situations maybe got you to this point. Things have happened in my life. Things have happened in your life. Things happen in all of our lives that we can't control. Maybe something happened and you have a huge medical debt. Maybe there are things outside of your control but at the end of the day, you've got to forgive yourself and own it. To me, it's how you own the problem, is forgiving yourself and being able to take those actions to start doing something about it. I would love to say if you just ignore it, it'll go away. But I think we probably see enough people and have enough horror stories of people that if you just ignore problems, they usually get worse. They don't get better. And so forgiving yourself is hard though. So I would agree with you. It's hard to not go back to that dark area of your life.
All right, next we're going to talk about recognizing your choices and why they were made.
This is a lot of soul searching and maybe figuring out why you spend the money you spend. So for me, and I've shared this before, I think it's important, while you're kind of forgiving yourself and going through all this, you also have to look in the mirror and realize maybe that the reason you're buying certain things is to cover up past hurts or past things. Like sometimes for me, it was painful to deal with my finances, and my release and the way I felt better was by going and buying more stuff because it's how I felt better. And I would feel better for sometimes a day, a week, a month, but then that goes away. And then I would medicate with going to buy something else, a TV, whatever, and I think that's how we dealt with a lot of our things that we had done wrong in our lives. It was the way we were dealing with it. So I do think it's important that as you look around your house and you open up, and I just seen a story this week about, we've got tons of layoffs going on. We're in the middle of this lockdown, and there was someone that was selling all their designer handbags because they didn't have any savings. And so for me, if that's you've got to look at, why are you doing that? Why are you buying that versus saving your money? There's a reason. There's probably reasons that you're doing that. I don't know what they are. They could be similar to mine. They could be completely different. But I think it's important to just figure that out, because it's going to help you know the triggers to make you want to spend money.
It was really just about the whole keeping up with the Joneses is what kept me in debt. Wanting to impress people, wanting people to be, thinking that I was successful, and just looking back, it's so stupid. it just is. It's just so dumb now.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's dance!
All right, it is time for the celebrations of the show. We've got 6 good ones here for you today. We're going to kick it off with Jill Flickinger Brown. She says she paid off a credit card. So congratulations to you, Jill.
And Aaron Schwartz paid off my furnace bill and replenish my emergency fund. Have about $500 left from the stimulus check. So that's going towards one of my credit cards.
Nikki McDougal made an extra $300 this month. My husband canceled his axe throwing membership and bought wood for less than the cost of 1 month's membership. He now throws at home, saving the monthly fee and gas to and from, plus all the drinks he would purchase while there. So awesome job.
Yeah, that is awesome. And by the way, I think I need to do some axe throwing.
I hear it's a great stress reliever.
I'm sure it is. It sounds pretty exciting. I've seen it. I don't think I've ever actually seen it live, in person, but I have heard of it. Jessica Herbst paid off a little more than $850 in credit cards and loans and have about $3,000 in her emergency fund, about to pay off more from my next paycheck because I'm lucky to still be working. Absolutely. Half of my bills are paid for May already as we record this here the end of April. So good for you, Jessica. Congratulations.
Lacey Love paid off the remaining $1,600 on my last credit card with my stimulus check. Still have a lot in student loans, but now those are gone, I can tackle those full force next. Paid off over $13,000 total since beginning this program in January.
Yeah, that is impressive. So I just want to pause there. Lacey started doing a lot of the stuff we're sharing with all of you on this podcast. 3 months ago? That's 3 months ago, and $13,000 paid off. By the way, she is single, on a single income.
Wow.
That's freaking impressive. Now, can you do the same thing? I don't know. But you can do something, and it's proof. Lacey, that's just awesome. It's great.
And for those of you listening right now, because I know there's people doing it because I used to. You're going, oh, she makes way too much money. You're pulling out all the excuses we just talked about. I remember I would read these stories and I would have all this, oh, she must be this, or her parents must have helped her out, or she must have found a pot of gold underneath in her backyard somehow. There are all these reasons. So just stop. And you can do it.
Absolutely.
Lori McAllister, we have not received the stimulus yet, but yesterday paid off $2,837 and now have saved a total of $2,500 in my emergency fund and $600 in other trip savings and Christmas accounts. Awesome job.
Heck yeah. Way to go, Lori. She's another one. Lori McAllister started doing some of this stuff within the last year and has paid off tens of thousands of dollars already. So lots of great celebrations, especially with the topic that we were covering here today in excuses. And it takes time to overcome these, but you got to recognize the ones that are keeping you stuck. Take those little steps every day by doing some of the stuff that we're sharing on this podcast, and slowly over time, you will start to see some success. So thanks everyone for hanging out with us today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our podcast. So please leave us an honest review in Apple Podcasts. We read every single one of those. And as you know, the Debt Free Dad podcast is here to help you live a happier and stress-free financial life. If you know someone who could benefit from our show, please give us a share. We appreciate you, and we will see you on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.